Corporate Board Member presents an informational webcast. On this edition, Succession Planning, Insiders versus Outsiders, with Laura Finn, web editor, boardmember.com, and Dayton Ogden, leader, Spencer Stuart, CEO Succession Advisory Services.
Hi, I'm Laura Finn, web editor of boardmember.com. Thanks so much for joining me and watching this informational webcast. Today I'm pleased to welcome Dayton Ogden, the leader for Spencer Stuart's CEO Succession Advisory Services. Dayton, thank you so much for being here.
I'm delighted to be here.
Let's jump right in. Could you please start by setting the landscape for CEO succession planning?
Sure. So back in the beginning of sort of 2001, we had a series of major scandals like Enron and Tyco and WorldCom, and Starbucks followed. And one of the things that Starbucks did was give the board unambiguous responsibility for CEO succession. And there were a lot of other things that Starbucks did that were slightly less popular, but this actually has been a very positive development. The SEC has reinforced the board's transparency requirement for transparency relative to CEO succession in the years subsequent to that. And I am pleased to say that from my experience over the last decade, corporate boards have really taken on the challenge of CEO succession in an aggressive and effective and much more nuanced and sophisticated way. And in the old days, the CEO would appoint their successor, and the board would ratify the successor. And now boards are working hard at making sure that they get to the right conclusion.
There is some debate out there as to who makes a better CEO successor, an inside candidate or an outside candidate. Can you talk a little bit about that debate?
Sure. We've done actually a lot of research on this because we had our own intuitive feelings about it from our experience. But we also thought that it'd be useful to take a look at the last 350 CEO transitions that have taken place in the S&P 500 over the last 5 or 6 years. And what we found was what you would intuitively think was correct. And that is that where you have companies that are healthy, stable, growing companies, and those companies appoint an insider, that insider performs better against a whole series of criteria than the companies where an outsider is appointed. Conversely, when a company is challenged and when there's a broken business model or a scandal or some horrifying event at the company, it is absolutely the case that outsiders have outperformed insiders when insiders have been selected.
That is a really interesting statistic. What does that mean for CEO succession planning?
Well, what it means is that succession planning is hard work, and particularly as the trend since Starbucks has been for internal executives to be appointed almost 75 to 80% of the time. It means that boards have to really do their due diligence in terms of figuring out who the best candidate is inside and making sure that there isn't a better external option were they to push the button and go outside. So what it means, Laura, is that that companies, that the boards have to form small committees who hopefully are comprised of people who have been CEOs at some point in their careers, who have the time to devote to this because there's a ton of work that goes on,
Right.
Appoint good advisors, establish a timeline, put together a process that has 4 or 5 different key components to it, and then work the process sometimes for a period of 2 to 3 years in advance of a CEO transition.
Now, when you're talking about finding great internal candidates,
Yeah.
how can boards go about identifying possible successors within the company?
What we say to our clients is that rather than use kind of cliches and shop-worn terms like Harry is a wonderful person who has strong operating strengths coupled with wonderful strategic, innovative skills and has unquestioned integrity, we like to advise our clients to first of all look very carefully at the performance of a company and think about total shareholder return, growth in revenues and profitability, risk profile, and really try and figure out what that internal executive has contributed to the performance of the company to date. And we also believe strongly that it's critical for boards to look below the level of the direct reports to the CEO. Sometimes there are fantastic people who, with the right development plans, can ultimately be the best selection. And the most important thing is to not choose somebody for the what the company is today, but choose somebody with a forward-looking lens and think about where you want that company to be down the road, and then match up the skill sets accordingly.
And how can board members do that? How can board members make sure with these possible candidates that they're getting the information about these people's potential and what their capabilities are?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what we say is that the first step is a diagnosis. It's a strategic and cultural diagnosis. So we want a board to be largely aligned, if possible, on the key elements of the future strategy. We also want to understand fully what the nuances of the culture of that particular enterprise are. And from there, derivative from that information comes the criteria, the 6 or 7 key criteria, which we help a board use in assessing the internal candidates. So once we have a strategy, alignment on strategy, alignment on culture, a set of criteria, we sit down and look in a very rigorous way at each internal candidate, not only in terms of what they've accomplished in the past, not only in terms of their past accomplishments and the patterns of their lives and what their aspirations are, but we look forward through the use of an executive intelligence tool, which is derivative from Peter Drucker's work, which really gets at someone's aptitudes. Their aptitudes for making decisions, sometimes with incomplete information, their aptitudes to navigate through complex interpersonal dynamics, and their aptitude to for emotional growth and maturity. Are they a good listener? Do they profit from the good ideas of others? And we combine the past and the future and surround it with good reference taking, and then present recommendations to a board.
Certainly no easy task for a board.
No. And then, Laura, the key is to then say, okay, that's our roster of internal options. If we were to push the button and go outside, who are the CEO-ready candidates out there who we would want to talk to, and how do they match up with our internal people?
It's definitely a lot of work, as you
Yes.
said, and I think it's a process that really needs to be looked at carefully by boards, maybe not just on an annual basis, but even more frequently than that to get the job done.
Yeah, that's a great point, because basically the world is moving so quickly these days, and the impact on business models of technology, on international developments, on macro developments, economic developments, such that the relevance of somebody's current experiences versus what they would be 2 years down the road could be very different. So both the assessment activity and the benchmarking needs to be updated on a frequent basis. The key, though, is for the board to get out in front of the next CEO transition years before it actually takes place.
That is an excellent point to close on, Dayton. So important to note. And I thank you for joining me today because this is, like I said, a really pertinent topic.
Well, I'm delighted to have had the conversation with you.
Thank you so much. And thank you very much for watching this informational webcast.
Dayton Ogden can be reached at dogden@spencerstuart.com. This has been a presentation of Corporate Board Member, an NYSE Euronext company.